Mario Kart, Nickelodeon Kart Races, Mario Party, Nickelodeon Party Blast, Super Smash Bros, Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, Mario Superstar Baseball, Nicktoons MLB, Mario Hoops 3-on-3, Nicktoons Basketball. Nickelodeon was pretty damn innovative with their crossovers in the mid-2000s with the Unite series, but that doesn't mean they were above taking a beloved Nintendo formula and making it their own. I only mentioned the console and PC games that Nickelodeon have put out that are reminiscent of Nintendo's party or sports titles, but if you look at mobile, you'll see soccer, golf, and tennis, the topic of today's video. Nickelodeon Extreme Tennis, or NET for short, gotta love developers naming their games purely for the sake of a joke, was announced in late December of 2021 and immediately received online backlash. But what was this backlash for? Was it because Nickelodeon was copying a Nintendo formula? Well, if you look at Nickelodeon video game history, that's obviously not the case. Was it because it was a mobile game and gamers were scared that it would be filled with microtransactions trying to prey on young kids? Well, no. Because it's exclusive to Apple Arcade, microtransactions aren't allowed. Apple has a hardline stance against any Apple Arcade games featuring ads or microtransactions. Was it because the game seemed like a lazy cash-in that does a bad job of showing love to Nickelodeon's rich history? No. It's actually the opposite of that. Fans of Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl were mad that Extreme Tennis actually looked good. The trailer showed off voice acting, character customization, and a whole list of things that All-Star Brawl's developers were seemingly told they weren't allowed to include, or the developers just didn't prioritize it during development, focusing exclusively on trying to become the next big esport. So Extreme Tennis had its back up against the wall immediately. All-Star Brawl fans can be ferocious, all 40 odd of them that are still out there, bless their hearts. My comment section on my review of the game, where I referred to it as the best non-Smash platform fighter ever made, was a goddamn war zone. The fans' anger over their game seemingly being shafted in favour of a tennis game immediately painted Extreme Tennis in a negative light. As a result, I wasn't exactly excited for this game. Hell, I initially wrote it off as something I wouldn't cover, but then I remembered that Apple has pushed Apple Arcade to more than just iPhones and iPads. Because you can play these games on an Apple TV or Mac, it's basically just a PC or console game. So I gave Nickelodeon Extreme Tennis a shot, not expecting much from this Mario Tennis clone. But guess what? It's really damn good. My name's Brandon and this is Nickelodeon Video Game History, a show where I take a look back on all of the video games based on Nickelodeon shows and retrospectively review them. And no, you didn't mishear me, I love Nickelodeon Extreme Tennis. It's not a perfect game, it has plenty of flaws that I'd love to see tweaked over the game's lifespan, but the stuff it gets right is so good. Nickelodeon Extreme Tennis is a pretty stock standard arcadey tennis game when you look at the base gameplay. Anybody who's picked up the Mario Tennis series or Hot Shots Tennis will be familiar with what's going on. You've got the base rules of tennis applied here, with the only actual major tweak to the format being the length of the matches shrunk down. It's just a race to be the first one to score 7 points. All the various change-ups for your shots are present: top spin, side spin, drops and lobs. It's tennis. Actually aiming the shots can take some getting used to, at least when using a controller. I played with a DualSense, but it might be different with the touch controls. Hell, most games that feature a player base that cross-plays with mobile generally sees the mobile players able to achieve way more than their console or PC counterparts, so that's likely to be the case here too. Aiming just feels a little stiff at first, but once I got half a dozen games under my belt, it felt natural and I didn't have an issue with it from that point on. The name of the game here is Timing. Well, the name of the game is actually Nickelodeon Extreme Tennis, but you know what I mean. Timing your shot just right will give you a perfect shot, which is much harder for the opponent to return. It's particularly satisfying to pull off a perfect drop shot and see your opponent madly scramble to try and reach it. Nailing a perfect shot is all about waiting until the last second to let go of the shot button. When the ball is in your immediate vicinity, you'll hold down the button and then just as it's about to reach your racket, you let go. On paper it sounds super easy to pull off, and after playing for a few hours you'll be ripping off perfect shots regularly, but in the heat of a match it's actually surprisingly tough to nail down. Because this is a Nintendo party game style title, there are numerous power-ups you'll encounter during matches. In true Mario Kart fashion, question mark blocks will pop up at random intervals, and hitting these with a ball will give you a power-up. These are almost always dedicated to making your opponent's life a misery. The slime power-up drops a slime puddle wherever the ball lands, allowing you to coax your opponent into it with the following shots, which latches onto them and then slows them down. The toy ball will stun your opponent if they come into contact with it, and the iron ball will push them back further when they play a shot. The gameplay's cherry on top comes in the form of super energy. Every single shot you play stockpiles this energy, filling up a gauge that has 3 different thresholds. When the first 2 parts of the gauge are filled, you get a dash ability to use. This is your last resort option for when the opposing player has got you on the ropes and looks like they're going to score a point. Drop a dash and your character will zoom over to the ball and automatically return it, no matter where you were or what shot was played. But the fun really starts when it's completely filled. Taking a cue from Super Smash Bros, each character has an ultimate shot. This shot is close to unplayable, but I love that the devs allowed for you to be able to return it as long as you have some pinpoint timing. Additionally, an ultimate shot can be used directly after another ultimate shot, which will automatically return it. It's like stacking draw 4s in a 1v1 game of Uno. It makes for this tense cat and mouse game when both players have their super energy gauge filled. Neither player wants to go first and give up that advantage. It's also just anime as fuck when these moments happen. As you can see, every ultimate shot leads to an over-the-top animation that pays homage to the specific character using it. One of my favourites was Michelangelo's. When I used it for the first time and saw the 3 other turtles pop up, I got excited like I was a school kid again. I can without a doubt say the core gameplay is really fun. Not the most complex systems at play here, but the matches are a blast, particularly when you're facing a human player, but I'll touch on that more later. As for single player, the game is entirely centered around story mode. This is essentially just your typical arcade mode you'd see in a fighter. Each character has their own unique tournament to play through. It's not revolutionary, but the game at least tries to make it a little less dull. Every matchup gives you a couple of challenges to try and complete. Stuff like play this type of shot X amount of times or dash X amount of times. These challenges are actually the most important part of story mode. You can go through and win all of the matches, but you won't get the reward without beating the challenges. Doing this nets the player an exclusive cosmetic item. Nothing crazy, but it's nice to actually have some purpose to this mode. It's not without considerable flaws though. The challenges create a number of clunky issues. Firstly, the devs need to patch in a way to view your challenges mid-match as soon as possible. Currently, you're forced to just memorize them, which is less than ideal. And at their core, the challenges aren't exactly fun to do. Most of them slip over into being annoying. Part of that annoyance is that the single player content is way too easy. Any player with half a brain will trounce most AI opponents 7-0. It gets so easy that it can often be a struggle to complete all of your challenges before winning. So many times I had to just toy with my opponent so I could use a certain amount of power-ups or do whatever the challenge was asking me to do. They've got the right idea with this mode, but the execution needs some tweaking. One of the most interesting things about Nickelodeon Extreme Tennis is that it's designed like a live service game. But like I mentioned earlier, Apple Arcade games aren't allowed to have microtransactions, so this setup is actually pretty great. So you start the game with one character. Naturally it's SpongeBob, but as you play the game you'll level up, gain experience and unlock new characters, with Danny being the final character for some strange reason. Would have thought Garfield would be the last one, but hey, I ain't complaining. All of this runs on a Battle Pass style system. Every time you level up, you get something new, even if it isn't a character. Battle Pass has become a bit of a dirty term in gaming. I actually think Battle Passes are great, as long as they're done right, which I guess is the case for every idea ever. A great Battle Pass that constantly feeds the player new things is extremely rewarding, but you've got to make sure there's a nice balance between how quickly you rank up. I could talk all day about the way these things are designed, but all you really need to know is that it's tricky to get right when actual money is at play. I've played numerous games with this system in place, with Pokemon Unites being a bit of a mess due to a lack of meaningful rewards, but when I was in my Fortnite and Rocket League phases, I remember really enjoying them. However, when you remove the aspect of having to purchase the Battle Pass or the entire concept of microtransactions, what you have here is such a cool way to make the player constantly feel like they're being rewarded. So much of this game is tied to this. You start out with a limited number of power-ups and needing to unlock the rest of them over time. You're even limited to what kind of shots you can play at first, with these tied to Battle Pass progression, although you do get them pretty quickly. This might be divisive to some players, and that's understandable. It's easy to feel disadvantaged when somebody has access to power-ups you don't have. When it comes to the shots though, this drip feed system almost feels like a great way to ease you into the game. Every time you unlock a new one, you get a tutorial, which spaces them out nicely and doesn't overwhelm you with an info dump at the start. Along with leveling up your profile, you'll also be leveling up each individual character. Characters have stats like speed and strength that alter the way they play, and yes, these stats do actually matter. Taking your character up against another character that's had much more time put into it will be a bit of a battle. Every game you play gives you experience points, so it always feels like you're working towards something. Also, without microtransactions, it's nice to know that people earn their high stats by playing, not just dumping money. Your rackets have stats too, which are upgraded in a similar manner. Assisting in the leveling up is the multitude of challenges found in Nickelodeon Extreme Tennis. These are referred to as quests by the game, with there being general quests and then character-specific quests. On top of that, you have daily quests and then weekly events, although those are focused around grabbing an exclusive pair of gear rather than leveling up your character or your overall profile. It really feels like this game was designed as your typical live service game, but without the microtransactions. It's odd, but it works. Each point you score nets a gold ball. Collect enough of these and you'll unlock a points bag, which is basically this game's version of loot boxes. Again though, no money involved. It's all of the endorphin rush of loot boxes with none of the predatory money stuff. Here you'll gain experience for characters and rackets, as well as new cosmetic items for your characters. Each character has head, torso and shoe options available for customization, and characters can mix and match these. I think I like this over a typical skin or alt costume type setup. Hell yeah, I want to make my characters look as ridiculous as possible. I also really like that the AI gets to join in on this fun. Most games would keep them in their generic forms, but here they're able to jump in and completely randomize their costumes. This is how you get Garfield looking fresh with a pair of slides and a chef's hat. Nickelodeon Extreme Tennis ensures players aren't let down by unlocking duplicate items too. When you have 3 duplicate items, you can fuse them, and the game just straight up gives you a rare cosmetic for it. Pretty neat. Most games with loot boxes have some sort of system like this, but I think this is my favourite execution. This game is constantly rewarding the player with new stuff. It's a real shot to the endorphins when you're always leveling something up, getting new items, beating challenges. There's an absolute glut of content here. Nickelodeon Extreme Tennis was clearly designed to have you coming back constantly, rather than just beating it in a weekend. Believe it or not, online play is actually a crucial aspect of this game. Most players will jump in, play SpongeBob story mode, level up enough to unlock Michelangelo, play his story, then hit a wall. You haven't unlocked a new character, so what's there to do? Well, the game funnels you to online matches. Playing these matches will keep you on that upgrade treadmill, with the added bonus that they're a lot more competitive than the AI. I actually really like this gameplay loop. Play some tournaments, hone your skills, get forced online to play actual players, then repeat. It works. In my experience, online matches get really tense. This match I had with a Garfield player had me on the edge of my seat. I had at least half a dozen stories of incredible matches in my relatively short time playing the game. It might not have the gameplay depth of an all-star Brawl, but this is a superior online experience. Naturally, as you play, you rank up. The game has an overall rank for your account and a rank for your specific characters. They try to match you with players of a similar skill level, and it works okay. There were a few too many times I was getting matched up with people who had no idea what they were doing, and I felt really bad beating them 7-0. On the flip side, there were times I'd match up with players way out of my league. Seeing somebody using Arnold, I'd just know I was in for an ass kicking because you need to put in a decent chunk of hours to get to him. Coming up against highly leveled characters with raised stats can legitimately put you in an unwinnable situation. I faced a cat dog that was way over leveled compared to me, and despite being able to rally with him for long periods of time, he'd inevitably take the point because his superior stats had me on the back foot the entire time. It was the most competitive 7-0 beating of all time. I think this is an issue that needs to be addressed, but this could also be stemming from the fact that the game is still in its infancy, it's been out for like a week, and the level gap between players is just so wide at the moment. What is a non-negotiable is addressing the lag. For the most part, matches run fine and finding a game is smoother than it ever was for All-Star Brawl, even when that game had an actual player base. When you do get the occasional laggy match, this game is unplayable. The ball teleporting around makes the match a complete roll of the dice. Nickelodeon Extreme Tennis has such a fun online experience. If they can tweak the matchmaking and tidy up the lag, it would be close to perfect. Okay, it's time to address the elephant in the room.
Happy birthday!
No, not that elephant. I'm talking about the supposed preferential treatment that made a lot of people shit their pants. Let's look at the roster. We've got just 10 characters covering just 9 shows, with Hey Arnold getting 2 reps for some reason. It's an underwhelming showing, but considering this is a mobile-focused title, it was probably to be expected. I also have a sneaking suspicion that they plan on dropping an entirely new battle pass with more characters later on based on the way it's all set up currently. It's a shame that they didn't include more characters. A bigger roster would make the battle pass flow a little nicer, and the characters aren't exactly complex as they don't have unique movesets outside of a passive ability and their ultimate shot. You get your standard stuff like the courts being themed after the shows here too, although I don't think every show gets a court. Off the top of my head, I didn't see a Danny Phantom court or a Garfield court. And then there's probably the biggest sticking point for All-Star Brawl fans, voice acting. Extreme Tennis didn't get new voice acting, as far as I could tell, but there are voice lines here. I've made my stance clear on this in the past. I don't really care if a kart racer or Smash clone or tennis game doesn't have voice acting, but I'm aware I'm in the minority. The issue is, these games always run into the problem of having the voice clips be so repetitive. I was ready for the characters to never talk ever again after like an hour. Be careful what you wish for, people. The question on everyone's lips is, why did this game get preferential treatment? Honestly, I don't have a concrete answer. Why did this game get to write its own unique dialogue for the story mode? No idea. I think some of the preferential treatment just actually came down to 2 different developers making 2 different games with 2 different priorities. Extreme Tennis has an extensive suite of customizable cosmetics because they wanted it. They still follow the Nickelodeon rule of needing the characters to wear canonical clothing, at least as far as I'm aware. All-Star Brawl's priorities were so clearly focused on the gameplay and competitive stuff that everything else was an afterthought. I have no doubt they wanted to include some of these things, but nothing I've seen from the devs makes it feel like they were a high priority. The best explanation I have for this situation is that Nickelodeon had previously worked with the developer here before, Old Skull Games. They developed SpongeBob Patty Pursuit. Nick knew they could trust them, so they were more flexible. Additionally, I don't think we should count out how big of a player the Apple Arcade deal is. I could imagine this exclusivity deal netted them a bunch of cash. Nick has supported Apple Arcade pretty strongly, so I wouldn't be surprised if that was a big factor here. Ultimately, Extreme Tennis has these features and All-Star Brawl doesn't. Learn to live with it, I guess. Lastly, I wanted to touch on the visuals and animations. It's not the prettiest game ever, but I really liked the direction they went in with the style. All of these characters from vastly different 2D art styles somehow work together. Characters run around the court in their own unique style, they get unique victory and defeat animations. I feel like they get a lot of life out of these characters in what is basically just a tennis game. What started as me being skeptical of a seemingly throwaway Mario Tennis game by Nick has ended up blowing me away. Nickelodeon Extreme Tennis is fun as hell. There's so much to do here that it's honestly kind of insane at times that it's an Apple Arcade game without any microtransactions. This game would have made bank just on the App Store normally, so I hope they secured the bag from Apple. There is genuinely more content here than in All-Star Brawl, and you could probably even make the argument that it has more content than Nick Kart Racers 2. It needs a few tweaks to some notable problem areas, but I was pleasantly surprised by my experience here. The devs clearly put so much passion into this. It's a damn shame that a lot of people are probably passing over this because it's a mobile game, as well as the weird backlash when it was announced. However, looking at the Apple Arcade charts, it seems like it's doing well, so maybe it's got a bright future ahead of it. So that's it for Nickelodeon Extreme Tennis, which means we turn our eyes towards All Grown Up, Express Yourself, the final ever Rugrats game. I've also added Nicktoons Move into the slate now that iToy games can be emulated, and then there's the SpongeBob movie game, which critics rated higher than Battle for Bikini Bottom. There's a lot going on here at Cartoon Review, so why not hit that subscribe button and follow me on Twitter.